I'm Mike Costello, and I'm here with Dr. Iris Freelander. And today we'd like to talk to you about the mystery of unexpected gifts. And our lives are filled with mystery and with unexpected gifts, aren't they, Iris?
Yes, our lives are. And sometimes we don't recognize the value of those gifts, and sometimes we don't even recognize the gift at the moment. I can speak for myself. I've had many gifts that I've received, and I haven't really appreciated them until later. And I think if we're alert and wide awake, we do appreciate them immediately. And we offer expression of gratitude, because it's said that on the inner planes, love comes first, but gratitude is second.
Mm-hmm. Great concept.
Yes.
Absolutely wonderful concept. And this idea of the mystery of all of our lives really, instead of creating fears and concerns for us, should create a feeling of expectation, shouldn't it?
Yes. Yes, and when we have a feeling of expectation, life is far more valuable to us, and we're more alert, wide awake, and also more productive. So it's like keeping our consciousness in present time, which we always talk about. And when we do, then we are living with greater expectancy and greater reciprocity, and also more. It's our lives are far more valuable in our own eyes.
Let's talk just a little bit about that concept. In New Thought, we spend a lot of time talking about living in the now, don't we? And one of the things in our counseling work and in our spiritual work, we understand and realize that so often people around us, in our families, in our work environment, and those whom we know, spend time either in the past or in the future, and this staying conscious in the present moment is tremendously important. It's a great spiritual lesson, but it's also a mental lesson, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And we need to take self-responsibility. We need to be responsible for our own happiness. And very often the people around us can be bright and shining, but if we're in a depression or having a downtime, then it wouldn't matter what the people around us are doing. So we have to be responsible for ourselves. But when we're in an environment of happiness and gratitude and lightness of being, then it's easier for us to do that. So we all owe it to those with whom we come in contact, and we owe it to ourselves. And just being alert early in the morning and keeping at it throughout the day in a deliberate way makes all the difference in the world, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Being present in the moment, I think, is something that we miss a lot. And I guess in today's environment, we're also busy doing the things that we're doing. And then, of course, we know a lot about the dynamic of mind, and we'll talk a little bit about that. We spend a lot of time talking about the dynamic of mind in New Thought. But if we really are aware of the present moment, we need to be aware of the people around us and acknowledge their presence. You know, one of the things in business that I tell business groups when I speak to them, or parents when we counsel them or talk with them, is just look at people and see them. But so often, put your pencil down, stop what you're doing. And that's a very difficult thing, because it seems like we always want to be busy doing something. Mm-hmm. And we have this idea that if we're not busy, that we're wasting time. And of course, in fact, we're wasting time by being so busy. and it's not truly a waste, but it does create difficulties for ourselves and for other people. So this acknowledgement of the person that we're dealing with, or the persons that we're dealing with, and then being willing and able to see the potential within those people. And as we teach in New Thought, seeing the divine potential within those people is tremendously important. But it begins with acknowledging the people around us and seeing them as persons. You've heard me tell the story so often about how often we go into restaurants and we'll have a waiter or waitress come up to us, and they tell us what their name is, and they tell us a little bit about what the specials are, and we are talking to the people around us, or even if we're by ourselves and we have a book or a magazine or even nothing, we place our order, and then the food comes, and the waiter or waitress comes back 2 or 3 times and brings water or coffee or whatever, and then we think of something that we need, and then we look up and we don't even know what the person looked like, or we don't know who they are. And that is a small example of our daily experience of life in the lack of our ability to see other persons and to acknowledge other persons. And of course, if we can't acknowledge persons on an individual level from a psychological and mental standpoint, then we have great difficulty seeing beyond the misbehaviors that we have in people to see the divine in them, despite what it is they say and do to us when we get into hurtful experiences and the pains of life. And I think there's some real spiritual lessons there. But this idea of seeing people and connecting with people, and also this connection avoids our sense of detachment and loneliness in the world. Isn't that true?
Yes, it is. And we need to acknowledge the importance of the people around us. So if we acknowledge the waiter or waitress, and I heard a public speaker, I've listened to a tape this week made by a public speaker who said that she went up to lunch during the time of her seminar, and she said to the waiter, and she didn't even look at him, she said, skip the orange juice and skip the coffee, I just want water, or something like that. She's giving him terse instructions. And he said, pardon me, my name is whatever his name was, and you didn't look at me. And she said, well, she looked at him like he was from outer space. And so he said, I'm from another, we'll say Milan, Italy. He was from another country. And he said, in our country, we're taught to acknowledge the people who come up to our table. We're taught to acknowledge anyone who's going to give us any service at all. And so she looked at him for the first time, and she said that was her lesson for the year, and it was a big lesson because she had just grown careless, and that's exactly what you were saying. We grow careless and we grow self-centered, and we just don't acknowledge the people around us. And we need to acknowledge children just as we do adults, and you can see the children blossom under your vision when you acknowledge them and just looking at them, and they look back at you. It's a wonderful experience. But so often we just take the children for granted and just slide over, and our eyes slide over them, and they're left to their own devices in that way. But we need to acknowledge everyone. And like when we give someone a special gift, we always look them in the eye and we always say something special. And that makes the event a special event. But every day can be a special event. Every day can be an adventure. Every day can be very special in its own right.
Absolutely. And the unexpected gifts of life can't come to us if we fail to see the persons and the people around us.
Yes.
And the really important aspect that you touched upon, and there were a lot of them in that brief statement that you made, but was our dealings with children. And we begin so often with our children, whether they're our children or other people's children, with this lack of the acknowledgement of children and the value of their personhood. And in that, we create the beginnings of self-esteem difficulties. And we begin the process of teaching them how to misbehave. And so that's tremendously important. And the acknowledgement and the nurturing of children, and the issue of eye contact, the issue of cordiality of spirit and outgoing warmth, and then we share with young people, and we share with those adults around us. And we tend to do the same, don't you find, with young people, with the elderly. In both cases, they're discounted very, very often. And also in different aspects of our lives, but those two categories. And interestingly, in those two categories, in our youth and our children, we see them coming to us for counseling in a psychological sense and in a spiritual sense with issues of very low self-esteem and wanting so desperately to be acknowledged as persons and behaving so that we begin to acknowledge them, and their behavior then sometimes isn't what it ought to be. And of course, in the elderly, what we see is withdrawal and loneliness and depression. And then, of course, in our busy lives of work, most of us are able to just let it roll off our backs. But in fact, there is a damage that takes place to us all because of this lack of connectiveness. But if we can't see each other as persons, and if we can't make that connection, then we certainly are not open to the unexpected gifts that we're going to receive. And we're not talking about material gifts, although those are wonderful too. But we're talking about the gifts and the blessings and the contacts and the intimate realities that we have relating to other people and other human beings, and issues of tolerance and understanding as well, when we talk about these gifts that come to us all the time. And we miss them because we miss the simplest things. We miss being in the present moment. We miss seeing the other people. We miss acknowledging people. And then we ultimately miss seeing the divine within each person.
Yes, and so we're missing a lot of very important aspects of our lives, and the part that makes life most interesting for us. So we could do it in a self-centered, self-serving way. I was thinking when you were speaking of a young, I think I've mentioned this before, I was walking on the street and there was a man wheeling his baby, and the baby looked to be about 9 months of age. And I've told about this in relation to the children. I know the children today coming in are very advanced souls. And so as I looked at that child, he looked at me as an adult would look, with recognition and joy on his face. And his father, he was in a carriage so that his father couldn't see him. And his father had stopped and was speaking to a friend, to someone, and he didn't see me either. So the young boy, the baby, and I, who was about 9 months old, just had a glorious coming together. And so the gentleman the father was speaking to looked like that. And so then the father looked to see, is someone taking my baby or what's happening? Is my baby safe? Because his friend's face showed that something was going on there. And I just said, well, you certainly have a beautiful baby. But I could have said to him, thank you for the gift that your baby just gave me. And it's a wonderful, glorious feeling when you make connection with another human being. And when we do that, when we're traveling very often, we just look at everyone as if they're the same. But if we look people in the eye, and then they look us in the eye, it's very rewarding. And those can be some of the most unexpected gifts of any trip or traveling that we might do, of connecting with another human being on a deep level.
Absolutely, and I'm thinking now of just last Sunday in our service when we did our joys and concerns, and we had someone who was sharing the fact that they had taken a young child to see a 90-plus-year-old woman, and that they were sharing the joy of that dynamic of seeing that child who was just celebrated her second birthday, seeing this 90-plus-year-old woman who was bedfast, and yet the bedfast lady, who has also been a part of our fellowship for many, many years, came alive because of the presence of that child. That unexpected gift, that real connection that took place. And it was interesting to me that in the joys and concerns that was shared as a joy.
Yes.
And it was a joy for the parent who watched it. It was a joy for the lady who was 90 plus, and it was planting a wonderful seed for this child who is 2 years old.
Yes, that's a wonderful example of an unexpected gift. And if we can all be more thoughtful and look to see how we can be more give more outreach. And also we can say, thank you, Father, whenever it happens. I know I started that habit years ago of just little unexpected things. And it's not just with people that we have unexpected gifts. It's like looking for our keys and finding them quickly, or any number of things, or finding just the right thing in the refrigerator right away. It could be, or if you're in a business office, that the phone rings at just the right time and you have time to visit with whoever's calling instead of having to say, I can't talk with you. It's just all these gifts. If we acknowledge them, I think they happen more often, don't you?
Absolutely. The gifts multiply
Yes.
because good things multiply just as well as negative things multiply. We'd like to pause at this point in the program and offer you the opportunity to receive some literature so that you can continue to study the ideas and concepts we're sharing with you.
We would like to offer you the opportunity to receive one of these free booklets to further your understanding of the New Thought message of confident living. Each month we will feature a different booklet, which will be mailed to you free and postage paid. Simply address your request to Confident Living at P.O. Box 7726, Long Beach, California, 90807.
Good things multiply, and so do bad things. And one of the things we know about metaphysics and New Thought is that we live in our minds and not in the world. And we know that the dynamic of our mind creates the environment in which we find ourselves. And so the way that we think about ourselves, the way we think about others, the way we think about our relationship with the presence and power of the divine and the presence and power of God determines every part and parcel of our lives. And just before the break, we were sharing that concept of multiplication. And as we look to this reality of unexpected gifts and opening our lives to unexpected gifts, if we're going to have wonderful gifts, and of course we can have bad gifts as well, we really do need to cultivate within our minds, within our hearts, within our behavior, and within our spirit the reality and the truth of this connectiveness with ourselves and others and with the presence and power of God. And when we do, then wonderful things begin to happen, just as we were sharing.
Yes, and in some churches they say, the Christ in me greets the Christ in you. And I think we don't have to say that, but it can be a way of thinking, a way of thought. And when we feel that power and that energy, then we look at people with brighter eyes. We look at them more with greater, deeper appreciation. And we look at them as a human being who is worthwhile, because we're putting our own value, the way we value ourselves, onto that other person. And it shows in our attitude and our actions. And we can live the most simple of lives, but still be an asset in other people's lives when we acknowledge them and when we bring out the best in that other person. And the way we bring out the best in the other person is showing our appreciation for them as a human being, isn't it?
It is. And seeing it despite their behavior.
Yes.
And I think that is something that, when we take psychology and spirituality and put it together, which is what mind science and metaphysics is about, we really understand the dynamic of how this law operates. Because when we put these things together, then positive and wonderful things begin to happen. And part of that law is to see beyond the appearances of people. And of course, a foundation teaching of what we believe and what we share with others is that the reality is that despite how people behave, despite what they say and do in the negative or in error or sin, if we want to use that word, that at their core, they have the ability to be redeemed, to be transformed, to be empowered, and to be strengthened. And so if we can see beyond their behavior, we begin to create within them and within ourselves a connection that, instead of detaching and judging, embraces and envelops them with the presence and power of God. And that is a dynamic power and a gift in and of itself, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And I was thinking that when we work with other people or just come in contact with them, we have that can be an unexpected gift for us. If we acknowledge that person with our eyes and with our voice, and then the gift they give back is very wonderful. And I've seen it in working with children, that if you look at a child and speak in a scolding voice, that child just backs up and digs their heels in. But if you look at the child and smile and say, no, we don't do it that way, or something gentle, then the child gentles right away and goes along with it. And so many parents, unfortunately, are so busy, they don't have time to be gentle and thoughtful all the time. But if we can, and children are just little human beings, so it's the same attitude. We can use the same attitude with everyone. And you mentioned earlier about the elderly sometimes are somewhat ignored. So if we can give everyone the same courtesy that we give to people who we think might be very special and necessary in our lives, or someone who's going to be important to us in business or so forth, well, if we can just remember to do that, then we reap the dividends, don't we?
Absolutely. And also the giving of this gift extends to those that we would not think necessarily of giving the gift to. And that is those people, again, going back to the issue of negative behavior, so that we're sending our thoughts and our prayers and our concerns and our salutations, just as you said, to people regardless of their behavior, so that we then send to them the mystery of an unexpected gift, which enfolds them and begins to transform them. Buckminster Fuller said that some of us are less damaged than others, and there are some people that are very severely damaged. We don't know what people go through. I know you and I, both in our counseling work and in our spiritual work, come across people who are damaged and hurt in so many deep ways. And so that's a reality. And sometimes we never get to that point, even as counselors or therapists or ministers. But we can know that when people say and do things that are inappropriate or negative or hurtful or damaging or destructive to themselves or others, that something has occurred. And the gift that we can give to them is to begin the process of seeing them in a different light. And rather than separating ourselves from them, embracing them with the presence and the power of God and seeing the divine within them.
Yes, and we don't have to be a minister just to reach out to others and to have that attitude of God is in every person, because it can be our attitude regardless of who and what we are or what our work might be or with whom we come in contact. And if we look at other people in that way, then again, it comes back to us. And I know a woman who, when she used to travel a great deal, people would come up to her on the street and say, "You are so beautiful." And they would say things like that to her, and her husband couldn't understand why they would, because he thought his wife was beautiful, but not that beautiful, perhaps. And so it's because she looked at people and looked them and made eye contact with people on the street. And I don't mean she was going like that, but that lady just would look at the people that she saw, and then she took on an aura of beauty. And by many standards, she might not have been beautiful at all, but it's just reaching out to others on an energy level. Then you make that energy connection, and it adds so richly to our lives. It makes us wonder why we don't do it more often, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and that is a renewable energy.
Yes.
And we speak a lot about energy.
Yes.
We speak of thought as energy, we speak of prayer as energy, and especially, again, in New Thought, in our faith tradition, we talk about renewable energy as the power and the presence that motivates all that is. And those people who are empowered and strengthened in great and wonderful ways never tire of doing good and never tire of thinking thoughts that are supportive and positive and affirming of other people. And we've used it so often in our ministry and also in the counseling work, the newspaper as both a prayer journal and the newspaper as a positive, affirmative document for people to begin to send thoughts to and about the most negative experiences in life. And it isn't that we condone it, and it isn't that we encourage it, and it isn't even that we overlook it. It is that we see beyond it to the reality that the things that we read about in the newspaper that people say are so terrible and awful, and the behaviors that we see demonstrated in people are the result of damage that has occurred in them, either in the physical sense or in the spiritual sense. And as we send our energies and our prayers and our thoughts and our affirmative feelings and emotions, and that energy goes forth from us, they may never know it, but what it does is it empowers them, it helps them in unseen ways, and it helps us, and it is renewable, and it never it gets exhausted, and it gets us away from this idea that we're pleading with God, or we're pleading with the universe, or we're pleading with someone to do something, because the reality is that there is the spirit of love and commitment that permeates everything.
Yes, and it's some call it prana, God's own energy. It's often called prana, and we're sending that God's own energy out to others. And then when we lighten that life, then they send the energy onto another person, and they lighten that life. And so it's a very wonderful system, but it is a system, and it's a system that we can understand. And you just explained it so beautifully that when we send it out, we're renewed. And when we send it to another person, then it goes on to another, and then each person in turn is renewed. And it is one of the most greatest joys of life, isn't it?
It is an unexpected gift. And it is an unexpected gift that we can give to others. It's an unexpected gift that they can receive. And sometimes we don't even know. We don't know the thoughts that people are thinking about us. We don't know the gifts that are being given to us in many cases. And at the beginning of the program, you talked so wonderfully about the importance of acknowledging and having an attitude of gratitude, which that attitude of gratitude empowers us and strengthens us. But as we go through life with the assurance that there is a wonderful energy, that there is a magnificent power in this universe, that the love of God permeates everything that is, and that nothing can stop that, despite all of the behaviors and misbehaviors of ourselves and others, we then open ourselves to these limitless and magnificent gifts.
Yes, and when we do, then we are the major recipient. And so we can always remember that we are an emissary of God. And we don't say that in a conceited way, but that every person who sends love and light into the world are God's emissaries. And if we can remember it in that way, sometimes it's more rewarding, because then we feel that we really are doing something with our lives, and our lives are really worthwhile. And as people age and they do less work in the world, that's one thing they can do as long as they live, is just brighten the lives of others through through the attitude of each person.
And that unexpected gift never stops giving, and we never stop receiving it. And so we hope that the ideas and concepts that we've shared with you have been helpful, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Mike and Iris would like to extend a cordial invitation for you to join them this Sunday morning at 11 a.m. for our weekly celebration service at the beautiful Seaport Marina Hotel at the corner of Pacific Coast Highway and 2nd Street, adjacent to the Marina Pacifica and Marketplace shopping centers. There will be a guided meditation, prayers, spirited music, and a dynamic, life-changing New Thought message. Please join us this Sunday. You will be warmly welcomed into the company of like-minded, positive, and uplifting people. And remember, whatever your dream, whatever your vision, you can attain it through confident living.